to make a rich his treasure. How great the pain of searing loss! The Father turns his face away as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon a cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed I
I always tend to start my talks, I've realized, with a question. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that tradition going. I've been thinking about this for a little while. What gives your life meaning? So just think about that, and I'll talk about my sister. But just think about that while I'm talking. What gives your life meaning? When I was probably, I think, 12, my sister was 10. There was a guy at my dad's church that came up to her one day, and it was something she said walking by him, or something like she was wearing or something. And this guy was my brother's age, my oldest brother's age, so he was like 10 years older than her. And he looked at her and said something about like, "Ugh, I would never marry you." It was just really weird, and it was just a strange situation. But this guy that's 10 years older than her, that she doesn't even know his name probably, said something to her that really just crushed her as a little 10-year-old girl. It just broke her heart. And in my family, if you pick on one of my siblings, that we're coming for you. At that time, she had 4 older brothers and 1 younger brother, and my dad. And so we went and had a talk with this guy. But the whole point of that story is she let this 10-year-old guy, or this 20-year-old guy define what made her life have meaning in a way. She let that just like crush her spirit, because she put so much emphasis on what somebody that she didn't even really know give her life meaning. And thinking about what gives your life meaning is a big question as Christians, and what gives us a sense of purpose in this life. Why are we here? What gives us a drive for living and stuff like that. In Jeremiah, it talks about, I think this is a huge part of my talk today, but I wanted to start off with a video from Milton when he talked. I wasn't able to make it to that sermon, so I watched it on YouTube. And he said several things in that video that just really struck me. So Kylie has the video if you want to play it real quick. So the first part that he's talking about, when he's talking about, I made you with a sense of purpose. I made you in his likeness. He said so many good things in this whole video if you want to watch it on YouTube or whatever. But he said something that is just so important, and it comes from, I'm pretty sure this is what he was quoting, Jeremiah 1:5. And God's calling Jeremiah in this chapter. He's calling him to do incredible things for the nation of Israel. And so in a sense, he's kind of trying to motivate Jeremiah and trying to give him encouragement is the word I was looking for. He's trying to give him some encouragement, because it's not easy to lead a nation, and it's not easy to be the leader of a bunch of people that really don't want to do what they're called to do. But so God gives him some encouragement in talking to him. And so in Jeremiah 1:5, it says, "Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." So he's telling Jeremiah that I made you, and before I made you, I knew you. I knew who you were going to be, and I made you apart. I set you apart from all these other people. And I think that can apply to us. God has formed you, and God has made you, and he made you in his image, and he set you apart. He set you apart for a purpose and for something in this life. He didn't just make you to wander this earth by yourselves and with no purpose. He made you for a reason. And that's so important when we're talking about our importance and our meaning of life on this earth. But if you look at the way the world looks at importance, it's a bunch of like, how good do you look? How much money do you make? What's your status in the world? Who likes you? How many people like you? On Facebook, we love to count our likes. When me and Kylie first posted like our engagement things, I'm like, yes, I got 100 likes on Instagram. And Kylie's like, well, that's nothing. I got 250 or something. Like, she just blew me away. But we like to put some importance on our lives by things that the world puts on importance. Right. I don't think if God had a Facebook, he would care how many likes he got. I just don't think he would. But when we think about like how good we look, we always want to look like, for guys, we want to look like The Rock. The Rock has everything, right? He's just a good-looking dude. He's strong. He's ridiculous. But I don't think God puts much on that, on how good The Rock looks. And what happens when you don't measure up to that? I can't measure up to The Rock. If The Rock came in here, I would not even look close to as good as him. Maybe a little bit. But but for girls, we want to look like Kate Upton. That's what we want to look like, because we think if we're pretty, the picture's all messed up, but we put so much importance on how good we look, and we spend so much time on, oh, my hair's not pretty enough, oh, my muscles aren't big enough, Tanner. we put so much emphasis on that, and I don't think God cares. I don't think God cares on how strong you are or how good you look or what kind of clothes you're wearing. That doesn't give you any importance in this life. Maybe a few more people will think you're good, but what happens when you get older? Or what happens when your looks start to fade, or the world standard of good looking changes? What happens then? Where will you be when that changes? What are you going to go to next? So a lot of times we go to money. Money is a big part of what sets you apart. What gives you value in this world is how much money you make. Because if you make a lot of money, then you can do a lot. You can go on nice trips. You can buy really cool things. You can buy big boats or big cars or small cars or fast cars or whatever. You can do so much in this world with it. But I don't think God really cares. I don't think he really cares. The Apostle Peter, walking to the temple one day, guy asked him for money. He says, I don't have any. But he says, what I do have is I have a relationship with the God of the universe. Amen. That's what he has. That's what Peter puts importance in this life on. And so another thing is we want to do is we want to be liked, or we want to have a status in this world. Because if you have a big status in this world, then you're important. Then your life will be fulfilled. If a lot of people like you, or if a lot of people think you're cool, or if you're the boss at whatever company you work at. People think, if I just get there, if I just get to that position in life, then I will be everything I'm supposed to be, and I'll be happy. But I don't think that gives us meaning in this life. Michael Jordan, the best basketball player in history, no matter what Wilfred says. Best basketball player ever. But he still, when he got old and he couldn't do anymore, what did he do? He just went to the next best thing. He had to own a basketball team, because it just wasn't enough. He was the best, but it wasn't enough. And he's been married 5 times, and he gambles all his money, and he owns Nike basically. But it's just not enough. I don't think he's ever said, I'm satisfied. I'm done. I can just live. I can retire. I can do whatever. I don't think it's ever been enough for him. You talk to anybody that has ever played any game with him, and he says that he is the most competitive person they've probably ever met, because he has to win. He has to get that high. He has to get some importance out of winning. He has to continuously make his life more meaningful by things that don't give your life any meaning. It doesn't give us any meaning to be the best or to win. It's kind of cool sometimes when you hit the game-winning shot, but that's not going to give you meaning in this life. So my next verse is actually Kylie's favorite verse, and it came to me when I was thinking on what I was going to talk today. And it's in Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you peace and a future." Give you hope in a future. It's so awesome when we talk about our relationship with God. Is being with God is going to give you a future and give you a hope. That will make your life fulfilled. That will give you meaning, is when you walk with God. Walking with God and living in his will, that will give you meaning in this life. I've never once met somebody that walked with God daily that said, this isn't enough for me. I have to have more. I've not met that person that walked with God daily and said, I need more, I need something else, I've watched people. There's a guy that I went on a mission trip with, was a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company and left it all to go to Honduras and start a mission trip, or mission field in Honduras. Just left it all. Millions and millions of dollars, and he left it all. And I don't think that he would tell you today that it wasn't worth it.
Right.
I don't think he would.
Yeah.
Because walking with God is the one thing in this life that will give you meaning, and being in his kingdom. That will give you meaning in this life. Living for others and helping others and just loving people. That's what we all want, is we all want to be loved. And giving that to others and doing that for God and living in his will, that will give you meaning in this life. And so I just think that's a really cool part of our faith and what we do here, is that this will be enough for you.
Yeah.
This is all we need, is a family together walking in God's will. That will be enough. So I just want to take prayer right now. If anybody has any prayer requests, we can go ahead and take those.
So glad we have a wonderful, loving God we can bring our needs to. I know you all are as well. I don't know what I'd do without that. Well, I know what I did before, and that was just get like super depressed all the time. So I guess that's probably what I'd still be doing. And then, of course, that takes its toll, and you wind up living a lifestyle that is horrible and hurts people because you're hurting. I love that expression, hurt people hurt people. You know, and that's a true thing. Yeah, but I'm thankful today. I'm very thankful today. In spite of everything that's going on, or including everything that's going on in the world around me and my personal world and all the different things that are going on, I'm thankful for the Lord today. I have some really bad jokes. Whenever I visit Sharon in the hospital, which is my mother-in-law, she says, "Did you tell any jokes?" I said, "No, I haven't told any jokes lately." So I looked around, and I couldn't find any good ones. Not like the really good ones I usually tell. Not like those ones. So these are like, I decided I'd go for like the low score, like golf, right? You go for the lowest score. I'm going for the lowest. Okay, 19 and 20 got into a fight. 21. Huh? Oh, I know. It's terrible. Terrible. I can't believe they even have these on the internet. I applied for a job today, and they asked for 3 references. I wrote a dictionary, a thesaurus, and a map. God, it gets worse. I guess I could stop. Nobody's making me do this. I thought maybe, I don't know if the science people will appreciate this. Why don't aliens visit our planet? Terrible ratings, 1 star. Oh, these are the good ones. The 4th one's the worst one. And I'm not even going to tell it because it's so bad. Are you going to beg me? Come on, beg me. Beg me. My sister bet me I couldn't make a car out of spaghetti. You should have seen her face when I drove pasta. God. Throw things, please. Isn't that terrible? It's so bad. When I read that and went, wow, well, that's the worst one. I'll put that at the end. All right, so I want to talk today about faith being not an experience, but a walk, but a journey, which really ties in with a lot of things you were saying, Elijah. And, we have a lot of great experiences. I'm very experience-oriented. And when I first experienced the Holy Spirit, it was like, wow, just really, really opened things up for me. I mean, experiences are wonderful. And people come to the altar and they give their life to Christ. But faith is not an experience. It is a journey. And some of us want it all by this weekend. We want to wrap it all up. I do. You want to arrive. Don't we want to arrive? Man, I want to arrive. But we don't in God. I've had incredibly wonderful holy moments, those moments when you feel like super holy, like you ever felt like you were almost like floating around or something? Like remember one time I was in Panera Bread. I'd been at this church meeting, and I don't know, I just got so saturated in the Spirit. I was over at Panera, and I really did. I felt like, man, can anybody tell? Do I look normal? I felt like I was looking down at all the normal people going, wow. I've had high holy moments. Maybe, I don't know if anybody can relate to that or not, and I've had moments where I just thought it was all for nothing. Like we've just all the things that I've ever said, all the things we ever did as a family. You know, I've had times with my family when it was like, oh man, we're just so blessed. And I've had other times when I've thought, we have gotten absolutely nowhere. You know, Jada teases me about, there was one morning, Sherry and Will are both very stubborn people, and they would argue like just tooth and nail over Latin homework. I think Latin was the 2 years. And they would just freeze each other out. So you're living in a frozen house. And I'm committed to have a house of love, right? We want to have a house of peace and love. We're Christians, for crying out loud. Are we not Christians? So one morning I was trying to get them to, and I finally just went, all right, let's just go for it. Let's just tear each other up. Who cares? Right? And then I left the room, went into the studio, and pouted for the rest of the day. It was very good spiritual leadership, actually. Yeah. So I've had worse, I'm making fun, but I've had terrible valley moments of despair and misery. And I've been on the mountain, but the thing is I didn't stay in the valley. And I didn't stay on the mountain. And there's things that God is going to teach us that we can only learn in the valley. And we can sometimes they're better learned. Some things are better learned on the mountain. Some things are better learned in the valley. We don't like it. A lot of times we human beings, we don't like it. We don't like to be tested. We know God tests us. He's training us. I like training better than testing. He's training us to hear his voice. We talked about that with Abraham and Isaac many Sundays ago now. That he's training us. And he's not doing it because the teacher doesn't give you a test or a training because he hates you, because he dislikes you. It's really the opposite. He's doing it because he wants you to know where you're deficient and where you need work. And so he's showing us where we need work. And through the process of twists and turns and the winding road of life, laughter and pain and pleasure and process, heartaches and humblings. If you take God by the hand, he will teach you. He will lift you up, and you'll look back, and it will be worth it. And it might be painful now, but he's not going to kill you. He's not going to wipe you out through whatever it is that you're going through. Sometimes he has to make adjustments so the rest of our life. I like what Milton said, something about the balance of our life. The rest of our life can be better than the first half, right? I'm going to read a little bit from Job. Job 42, 1 through 6. Yeah. Thank you, Kylie. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do everything and that no purpose of yours can be withheld from you. You ask, Who is this? Who is this who hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand. Things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Listen, please, and let me speak. You said, I will question you, and you shall answer me. I have heard you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Therefore I abhor myself, and I repent in dust and ashes. So Job, then this is really extraordinary, because at the very beginning of this chapter, or the book, actually, God says, Job is a righteous and upright man. Look at my servant Job, a righteous and upright man. And now this is in the middle of his life. And he's saying, I've been telling people, I've been talking about stuff I didn't know anything about. Not really. I didn't really know it. I was living my life on hearsay information. I was living my walk with God on what I'd heard, what other people had said, maybe what I'd read, but now my eye sees you. Whew. You know, you got to go through things yourself. I love it when kids, you know, they criticize their parents, right? Very common thing. They criticize their parents. Oh man, you guys should have done it this way. And then they grow up and they have kids, right? And they call up and say, man, these kids are driving me nuts, screaming in the middle of the night. And you're like, yeah, screaming. And they're so selfish. Oh, yes. I'm glad you're having the personal experience. You're going through this thing. You know, we got to have a firsthand account. It's very easy to be critical of other people who are going through something maybe you haven't gone through. Job says, I thought I knew you, but now I really know you. And then he repents. He says, I'm sorry I was wrong. And this is in the middle of his life. I've heard people say that they've walked with the Lord for many years. You know, I've walked with the Lord for 30 years. Well, have they really known the Lord? Have they really known the Lord? I mean, Paul says we feel after him. We grope for him. We're reaching for him. It's a process. We're getting to know him, all of us on our journey, at different places in our walk. You know, we're all in different places. That's why it's sometimes you know, I pray a lot about what I should say because, you know, I might be talking to people that don't even care that they don't know anything about God. I mean, and I can relate to that. I didn't care. You know, there's the first step where you don't even care about it. Then you start to maybe care a little bit, you know, and then God maybe reveals himself a little bit to you, but there's so much, you know, so many different places everybody can be. You know, I don't know where you are in your journey today. You know, maybe you're wondering about him. Maybe you're wondering why he put you through the things that he's put you through. Maybe you're just too busy to really, you know, you want to serve God. You want to do the right thing. You want to take the next step in your journey, but how can you? You're too busy. That might be. I'll call myself on that one. I just want to tell you this weird thing. Okay, and I don't know why, but maybe it's for somebody. I was at a church service in Austria a long time ago, and I was the only one that went. I guess I don't know why, but I was there by myself, and there was this American preacher, and he was talking there, and he said a lot of things, but he said this one thing that I thought was really stupid, and I'm going to share it with you. I did. I thought, oh, that guy's crazy. That's really weird. That's really stupid. But I tell you, it's always stayed with me. So I don't know. Maybe it'll help somebody. He said, I've been so busy. I got this you know, church in America, and I'm here in Europe, and I was at the airport the other day, and I just wrote down busy. And I looked at it. I felt like the Lord touched my mind and said, being under Satan's yoke. Being under Satan's yoke. And I thought, wow, that guy's nuts. But it stayed with me. And sometimes I think to myself, man, you know, we're too busy. We're too busy to even let the Lord work. You know, many times he works through other people. I'm gonna talk about Acts 8 next. But before I say that, you know, in Acts 8, Philip is running after this chariot, right? Philip, I'm gonna paint the scene a little bit more. And this eunuch, this Ethiopian, he opens the door to his chariot to Philip. But they both had time. They didn't say, you know, God didn't say, hey, go out into the desert and then go talk to this guy. And Philip didn't say, I'm too busy. And the Ethiopian didn't say, hey, slow down, let this guy into your chariot. The Ethiopian didn't say, well, you know, I don't have time to listen to this guy, right? And it's this incredible thing that possibly like saved a continent. If you look at history, I mean, sometimes these things that we think of as little things, in like you were saying, how the things the man thinks are grand and great are nothing to God, and the things that are nothing to man are everything to God, right? Like a little encounter in the desert between those two men, you know? Anyway, busy, being under Satan's yoke. I don't know why I felt to share that today. Think about it. Yeah, knowing God is a process. Paul says we feel after him from speculation to revelation. From speculation to revelation. We want to move on our journey in that direction. In another place, Job says, the Lord knows the way that I take. When he has tried me, we all know that verse probably. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. When he has tried me, he's going to have to go through it to come out as gold. And Paul picks up on that at the end of his life, right? Or no, in the middle of his ministry. He says, I count not myself to have apprehended. In other words, I have not received it all. He's on the journey and he hasn't received it all. And then at the end of his life, he says, I've finished my course. I have kept the faith. Man, I want to be able to say that. I've finished my course. I've kept the faith. Therefore, a crown of righteousness has been laid up for me. So here we are on this journey, you and I. Now I feel like I can move on to Acts 8. All right. So in Acts 8, there's a man running after this chariot. Okay, so let's talk about the two guys. Philip, he is an underling of the apostles, really. He's first one of the guys that's appointed to wait on the tables and things when they decide that they're setting up sort of this order. And so then he gets... I don't know if he's sent. I don't remember if he's sent or if he just goes to Samaria. But he goes to Samaria, which is a place that's looked down on by the Jews. You know, it's not like the high place of Jerusalem where the apostles are. They're probably thinking, you know, let's send that kid over there to Samaria. And it says, I mean, I'll just sum up a bunch of stuff that happens in Samaria. But, I mean, miracles upon miracles happen in Samaria. And it says the whole city was converted. Wow. What would that be like? You know, we're like amazed at the miracles and the love and the fellowship of just a small group of people. What if the whole city was like that? The Spirit of God pouring out and the sick being healed and people getting saved everywhere. It must have been incredible. And Philip's the man. I mean, he was the first guy. It's his work. He started it. And then God just says, you can put up the beginning of, then an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip and says, arise and go toward the south. Oh, great. Go into the desert. And no further instruction. Just arise and go into the desert. How many of us would even do that? Right? Just leave everybody, all the love and all the fellowship and everything, and just, where are you going? I'm going into the desert. Why? I don't know. So that's Philip. That's where we are in the story with Philip. Now the Ethiopian, he is the second in command of Queen Candace. So he is the guy who is looking after her finances. So he's smart, he's powerful, he's privileged, he's getting to go to Jerusalem. And why would he even want to go to Jerusalem? Well, if you look back in history, the Queen of Sheba, remember back in the Old Testament, the Queen of Sheba goes and visits Solomon. I think Yul Brynner played Solomon, and what did Elizabeth Taylor play? No, that was Cleopatra. But yeah, I remember one of those old movies of like, why have you come to see me? You know, there's this whole romance that happens. And but anyway, so so the Queen of Sheba goes, and she's amazed with Solomon and talks about how wise, and she goes back and brings a form of Judaism with her that then gets passed down from generation to generation to generation. Now this Ethiopian, years and years and years, centuries later, he's coming to Jerusalem, and he's been there to worship. He's been there, you know, at a high time, and he's reading Isaiah, and something's happened with him. But I want to point this out. I think this is so cool. It's like He's had an experience and he's heard some things about God. But the real breakthrough happens on the journey. The real breakthrough happens not at church. He's been to church, right? The real breakthrough happens with some nobody in the desert somewhere on the journey. Hallelujah. Yeah. There's a man running after your chariot perhaps today. You know, it doesn't matter what you do in here. It matters what happens on the journey. It's easy to lift your hands in here. It's easy to be spiritual and quote scriptures and, you know, be all holy or whatever. But what happens on the journey? And notice that Philip meets the eunuch at his place of uncertainty. He's coming back, and he's on his way home. And he's reading the scriptures, but he doesn't really know what it means. He doesn't really have it, you know. So he's in this place of uncertainty, and then Philip shows up and he says, "Come on into my chariot." That's very significant. Many of us, we don't let anybody in unless they meet a whole bunch of criteria. Right? We have a very small window of the people that we will accept a word from. Right? Maybe they got to be educated. Maybe they got to look a certain way. Maybe they got to be like you in some way. Or, you know, I see that all the time. You know, somebody's got some. I can sense somebody's got some, but this other guy, he's not having it because he thinks he's up here. And he won't listen to that lowly guy. You ever seen that? I've seen that. And it's a shame because everybody loses. Right? You got to humble yourself enough to let somebody into your chariot. Let somebody in. Who is Philip's? Nobody. The eunuch doesn't know about any of that stuff that happened in Samaria or any of that stuff. He's just some dude. But he opens up his chariot because he's, you know, he lays down his pride because he's uncertain and he wants to know. A lot of times we don't want to get to a place of uncertainty. But uncertainty is where God can really work. When we have it all, when we know it all, look how the eunuch humbles himself and says, well, how can I unless somebody tells me? How can I unless somebody tells me? Most of us, we don't want to be told anything. Not by people. We might be open to God. We might be. But a lot of times, we can be pretty closed off to each other, right? Who is he to tell me anything? I already know all this stuff. Oh, where am I here? Until you can lower your pride and your ego enough to communicate your deficiencies. Maybe you're not smart enough to figure everything out. He was really good with finances, but that didn't mean he could figure out the scriptures. A lot of times we have success in one area, particularly guys, particularly men. If they have success in one area, they get all puffed up and think they know everything. Right? They don't need any advice from anybody else. Until you can lower your pride and your ego enough to communicate your deficiencies and say, how can I? Because my journey is more important to me than my pride. Moving on in my journey, I feel like I'm kind of stuck and I need some help here. And that place on your journey, it might be at the hospital. It might be in the place of your pain. It might be in the hallway. It might be somewhere where you're not really expecting it. None of this stuff is happening in church. Not for Job. Not for the eunuch. And they both go from a place of I've heard about this, of hearsay to reality. They both go from a place of, well, I've heard about this stuff, but now I see you. Now my eyes are opened. So let's be open to people. And by the way, I'm not talking about myself being Philip, by the way. Some people, I think, some people think I've heard other preachers talk about this kind of thing, and I knew they were talking about themselves. Like, somebody's running you down and has the word for you, brother. Right? I don't know if you ever heard that. I just wanted to be clear, I wasn't talking about myself. I think everybody has a different moment of uncertainty and truth, and God will use people to deliver those things. And don't fall into the trap of trying to pretend that we know more than we know. I mean, it's a common mistake. People have been doing it throughout the ages. But arrogance always destroys opportunity. If you're arrogant and you think you have it all, well, you're not going to be open to anything else, are you? But when you say, I can't, I don't know how to do this. There's going to be things in life that you're just not going to know how to do. I don't know how to get past this. I don't know how to get past this pain. I don't know how to I really don't know how to move on from this thing. I don't know what to make out of this. I'm just scratching my head. Why would God do this thing? How does a loving God do this, right? I mean, we come to those places. Let somebody in. This is for somebody today. There's a Philip chasing you down. Slow down. Don't be too busy. Say, come on, man, let's take a ride. Let's take a ride. It's when you become vulnerable and say, I count not myself to have apprehended. It's when you say, I'm not there yet. I don't know how, and teach me. Sometimes we're more concerned with our pride than our productivity. When I first started working in Europe and preaching the word and having services over there, I wanted to do God's will with all my heart. And I wanted to bring people into a deeper place with God. And who knows how to do that, especially in a foreign country, you know? And so I think I would start the services off with I just wanted people to go straight into some real deep place. So I'd start it off with I don't know, maybe, you are the air I breathe. And I'd sing it for 20 minutes. You are the air I breathe. Come on. You know, and somebody I didn't know, he came up to me and he said, I feel your heart in this thing, but it might be better if you started off with those happy hand clapping songs that you do at the end. Maybe I ought to do one or two of those at the beginning, kind of bring people in, and then maybe you can move them into a deeper worship thing. And I was like, I didn't tell the guy, what do you know? I was like, yeah, okay. Because it was more important to me to have the Spirit of God go forth and to affect the people than it was for me to act like I knew what I was doing. Because I was totally uncertain. If you're living in a place of certainty, I assert to you that maybe you need to step out with God just a little bit further. Because that's where he really works. That's where he does his best stuff. Isn't that what we testify about is I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what to do. And God did this amazing thing. That's how we know that it's him. So Philip says, I want to add a few more things to your revelation before you go home. And the eunuch, he's on his way back. He wants to take something great. He wants to take it all with him. He wants to go back with a revelation. And Philip says, let me just explain some of these scriptures to you, which could seem like a small thing. But listen, a key is a small thing. But if you don't have it, you can't start the car. Right? A small thing. He gives him a small thing. The keys to the kingdom. The kingdom is big. But sometimes our missing pieces, they seem like small things to us. And he opens it up. His eyes get open. The eunuch says, there's some water. And straightway they went down and he was baptized. Listen, faith isn't just an intellectual thing. It isn't just in your thinking. Right? It produces action. If it doesn't produce action, then maybe it's not all the faith that you're meant to have. I won't say it's not any faith at all, like some people might say. But maybe it's not, if it doesn't produce action, look at that. So his eyes get open, and then it's like, now let's do something. Let's do something. It leads to some kind of action. So the eunuch was in control of his chariot as you are in control of your life. But he chose to let someone in on his journey that was going to give him the missing part, that was going to let him really go further. And I like the way I feel like the spirit of the eunuch is like, I want it all. I want everything that God can give me right now. I don't want to leave here without getting everything that God can give me. And that ought to be our spirit today.